Robertson, and I'm the founder and director for the Anchor Gathering, and I want to officially welcome you here tonight to our in-person Anchor Gathering. We are broadcasting from Medina, Washington, and I want to say a special welcome to all of you out there tuning in on a watch party, or you're on your own. We are so thankful that you're tuning in tonight. We have a great evening planned, and before we get started, I always like to share a few things. First of all, if you haven't already, if you could please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us, like us, share us on our social media platforms. And most importantly, I'd really like to share this. We are looking for more women to consider coming on board as watch party hosts, and that entails opening your home or your church and inviting women in to watch the Anchor at Home program together and being encouraged in the good news of Jesus Christ. So we'd love for you, if you're interested, to go to our website, theanchorgathering.com, go to become a host and sign your name in there. We'd love to connect with you. And if you're here in person tonight, you can see Lori Callahan in the back, and she's got a little gift for you if you sign on. We would love for you to join our team and help to share the hope that Jesus brings. So, every Anchor, we like to start with music, and tonight it is an honor to introduce our musician. Her name is Meghan Bratt. She is coming up behind me, I think. And a few things about her: she is a singer-songwriter, and she works in communications and marketing for a local nonprofit, and she and her husband live in this North Seattle area. So, let's welcome Meghan Bratt.
Please feel free to sing along if you know the song. It is called Build My Life.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name.
Thank you so much, Megan, for sharing your gift of music. That was beautiful, and I love that song and those words. Just really hit our hearts, really beautiful. Thank you. I'd like to share what our anchor moment is for those of you who might be here for the first time. The anchor moment is an interview time that we ask a guest a little bit about their life and their faith journey and about an anchor moment that they've had. And an anchor moment is a time in their life that their faith has been grounded. They've seen the Lord to be real in their life. Lately I've been thinking it's an encounter with Jesus. You've really seen him and you've got to share your story. So we are so thankful Jen is with us. A fun fact I have to mention, because this is very amazing that she is here tonight, and we're in this beautiful place. We have not been here, everybody, since before COVID, and this is where the anchor used to meet. So it's very special that we are here. But fun fact, Jen here was our very, very first anchor moment that was on the Anchor at Home for the video during COVID. So it was May 2020, exactly 4 years ago. If you want to go back and watch it, she's in her car. She sits in her car, she has a baby, and she has such a special anchor moment, and it's really amazing. It involves being here and being with the speaker we have, and like you will hear her story. And so it is fun just to mention that, because we've come a long ways. Then when we, blew out the video, the website got so overloaded that we had to then go to YouTube. So that's how the whole YouTube thing, came to be. It was not my idea at first. So we're so thankful the YouTube has taken the anchor so much farther and reached more women with the good news. So Jen, I could keep going, how amazing that is. We are so glad you're here, and let's just welcome and let's get started.
Okay.
Why don't you start with, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Katie, so much. It is a little surreal being in this space because I'll get to that a little bit later, but this was the same room where I actually had my anchor moment. A little bit about me. Kind of the thing that stands out the most right now is I'm a wife and a mother. That's the era I'm in, of young children. So I've been married to my husband for 5.5 years, and we have 3 really small children. Aiden is 4, Astrid just turned 3, and then we have a 2.5-month-old who just started smiling at me. So my other 2 yell at me, and then my baby smiles. It's great. So we have a busy home right now. Yeah.
Well, how about a little bit about your faith journey?
I'm still on it, but it's really not that interesting beyond when I actually came back to my faith. I grew up in a Christian family, so I had a Christian foundation. My mom and dad are great parents, and they raised me in a Christian family. I had a strong faith, I think, growing up, but really when I entered middle school and high school and I started to form my identity, I started to come up with a plan, and I started to create an identity around performance and proving myself through performance. And maybe this resonates with some of you in here. And I just started to rely more on myself, and I love control, and I started to rely less on God. And so by the time I left for college, so all through my 20s and my early 30s, I was on my path, my plan, and I really wasn't praying at all. I didn't have a relationship with God. I would make my parents happy by going to church at Christmas and then at Easter, but I was a holiday Christian until my anchor moment.
Okay, this is good. I can't wait to hear this. Okay, so now we'd like to tell us about I know you have a lot of anchor moments, but we want to hear that anchor moment.
The anchor moment that's like the most fitting to share tonight. I just realized it was 7 years ago, which is wild to me.
Very wild.
Let's see, so my anchor moment was here. It was at an anchor event. God was not too clever in his delivery to me. It was, you're gonna get anchored at the Anchor, Jen. But the speaker that night was Donna. So the speaker tonight was the speaker the night that the Holy Spirit was at work and changed my life forever. And I'm gonna share a little bit about the context that led up to that. But, we don't often know where our message hits, and I know that a lot of decision making went into having Donna there that night. Someone invited her, someone connected all the dots, and there was a lot at play. And you just can't make this up. Like, it was just the perfect timing. So a little bit about that year. So I was an elementary principal, and in December of 2016, so 11 months before my anchor moment, I was hit in the back of the head with a metal folding chair at school, and I had a traumatic brain injury. And like I shared earlier, it was an accident, but I had always proved myself through performance and what I thought I could do, what I could control. I would set goals and I would reach them, I would achieve them, and I, gave myself the credit. It's kind of naive of me, but I did. I really thought that if I worked hard, I could get what I wanted. And that doesn't happen when you're recovering from a head injury. The healing is really nonlinear. It's also an invisible injury. I would show up looking the same, right? But inside, I was really a mess. And I wasn't equipped to manage that, I wasn't equipped to struggle in that way. And the things that I dealt with was mostly language and communication, so language processing. And it was just really hard to live in that environment and not have people know that you're struggling. And with the personality that I had, I hope it's past tense, I wouldn't share my vulnerability. I really wanted people to know that I had it together because that was important to me. And so that also created a lot of shame and anxiety in me that I hadn't experienced. I returned to work too early, and that just created more confusion and concern from my staff and from parents. And I try not to think too much about that time, but ultimately I resigned. So I left the career that I had worked so hard for, the career that I was passionate about, because I was in so much shame of just not being able to show up and feel like myself. At the same time, I was engaged. We had bought a house, so that was another plan that was in action. And 11 months after my initial injury, so I'm getting kind of full circle here, it was Thanksgiving weekend, and the relationship it was over. Like, I had to come home, I had to move out, I had to leave. So I called my mom, and I said, "Mom, can I come home?" And she was like, "Yes, come home finally." And I did. I moved home, so I'm in my mid-30s, and I'm out of my job, I'm out of my relationship. These were the two tenets of my identity. Like, my career, if anyone would have asked me, "Jen, who are you?" I would have said, "I'm a principal, I went to this school, I have this degree." Like, I was really proud of things I had accomplished, right? But I was so lost, and I didn't have that. And up until this point, this was the most suffering that I had ever experienced. I had a lot of despair, I had a lot of hopelessness, and a lot of this was internal too. I don't even know if my family knew everything that was going on, because I was so full of pride. But I moved home, and so I'm out of this relationship, I'm selling the house that we had bought, like, I'm out of my career, I don't know who I am in my mid-30s, and my mom invites me to the Anchor. So at this time, I'm very emotional, I'm probably defensive. "Mom, I'm so thankful that you invited me and that you took the risk to offend me." I remember I was not a Christian, and I could have just blown up at her, but I didn't. I said yes. I joke with Katie all the time that it was probably because of the appetizers and the wine that I actually showed up. But I did. I showed up, and I'm so thankful I did, and I know it was the Holy Spirit now. But I was sitting in the audience, and I don't remember much about that night. I remember feeling a little bit self-conscious because it was actually this room, and it was the holidays with a bunch of Christian women in Medina. Like, I wasn't fitting in. I was in a lot of despair, right? And so I sat in the corner in the back, and I was just kind of, sipping on my wine and maybe guzzling it. I don't really quite remember. And, I just remember Donna speaking, and she was sharing. And I don't remember all the details, but I remember a couple of things that really stood out. And I remember my feeling, because she was sharing, and she had been through some stuff. Like, we're women, Christians, like, we've been through some stuff. Life is hard. It's not, there's suffering, there's real pain. And so she was sharing something, and I remember there was something different about the way she was sharing it. There wasn't, she had been through some stuff, and there wasn't the despair, and there wasn't the hopelessness. And part of me, I noticed that got my attention. Okay, what's different about this woman? And then she was sharing about Kairos moments, and Kairos moments are these moments that, if I remember correctly, are just appointed by God to act, and the course of your life changes. It's, it's this moment where you just it's a now or never kind of deal, and I just had so much darkness and hopelessness and despair that I literally had a Kairos moment in the back, and I just I don't know, it's like that, I just released whatever I was holding on to, and I prayed. And my prayer was, God, I don't know how to believe in you. And what that meant for me at the time was, I don't know how to submit, I don't know how to obey, I don't know how to listen, I don't know how to trust, and I can go on and on, right? Like, it wasn't just believe, it was a whole plethora of actions and faith. And I just prayed that. I said, Lord, like, I don't know how to believe in you, show me how to believe. And I thought a lot about this next part because it's really hard to describe, but I felt the Holy Spirit in that moment, in that corner in the back, in the chair just like you guys are in. Actually, I think they were less comfortable back then, but I think these are a lot nicer. But I just remember, like, I had this, the way I describe it is, imagine if you, all of your self-awareness, all of your insecurities, all of the voices in your head, all the negative self-talk, all of the pain, everything is lifted. And for me, it was almost like a physical lifting of my injury too. Like, there's just a clearing in my head, and I felt the Holy Spirit and the peace that came over me. Like, if that's what heaven's like I've been chasing that ever since. I haven't felt it, but I've been chasing it. And I just felt the Holy Spirit, and I heard Jesus in this room. Like, you know, and I had moments where I was like, is this my concussion? Like, but I heard Jesus, and he said to me, he said, Jen, you've been doing it your way for so long. How about you come do it my way? And I didn't really understand what all that meant, but, you know, he did. He called me by name. He said, Jen. And then he said, you know, come do it my way. And, you know, in that moment, I had the foundation of faith. I knew who Jesus was, you know, the theology. And so I just knew that what I was experiencing was like a Kairos moment. Like, okay, God, I hear you. Like, I'm here. I still don't know how to believe or how to do all those things, but you're real, and I'm having this experience. Pretty quickly, that feeling was gone, that peace was gone, and I became aware again that I was in the room, right? And I was surrounded by a bunch of strangers, and so I tried to leave and escape, but 3 women, and one of them's here tonight, but 3 women from different corners of the room came up to me, and they put their arms on me, and they prayed over me, and it was a little uncomfortable because I wasn't used to that kind of, you know, huddled prayer. But they didn't ask questions. There was no shame. There was no condemnation. They just were like, honey, I see you. Like, let's pray for you. And I don't think I had really been encouraged by women in that way up until that point. Or maybe I hadn't let friends encourage me, or I hadn't received it. But I just really felt held and loved and seen. And there wasn't the shame I had. There wasn't the hiddenness. I was exposed. People had seen me crying, and they welcome me, and that's what I love about the Anchor, is just the encouragement. And you know, every time I think about that time, I have such mixed feelings of like thankfulness, of sadness for that girl, that person that I was at that time, and then just, I don't know, you know, life is hard, and I still experience suffering, but I don't have the despair and the hopelessness that I had, you know. And I mean, I'm married, I have 3 small children. Trust me, there's a lot harder stuff going on in my life now than just that version of me a couple years ago. But I mean, let's just be honest. But I need Jesus every day about 10 a.m. But there's not the despair, and there's not the hopelessness. And I know that, like, I'm the daughter of a king. He sees me and he loves me. And whenever I have doubts, I have my Christian girlfriends that I text and call, and I just say, like, girls, I need prayer, you know, and I have that community here at the Anchor, and I have it elsewhere, and I'm so thankful to be able to share. And so, Donna, like, thank you that night, because your message, you had no idea who I was, and that's the power of our story. Like, that's why I made a promise that when I'm asked, no matter if I'm 2 months postpartum, you know, whatever's going on in my life, I am going to share, because someone sharing spoke to me in the most beautiful, profound way. And people have been praying for me for years, right? Like, my mom, I'm sorry you don't get more credit. Like, I know you've been praying for me for 15 years, but it took Donna's message to meet me in just the perfect moment for the Holy Spirit to act. And so, you know, I come back to that a lot. Like, when can I be sharing the good news? When can I be talking about Jesus? And when can I risk offending someone or making someone uncomfortable by inviting them to events like the Anchor, or praying for them, praying for strangers? And I don't always get it right. You know, I'm still of this world quite a bit. So, but I'm so thankful. And so, Donna, thank you for sharing that night. I can't wait for your message tonight. Who knows what's going to happen?
That's right, another Kairos moment.
Yeah, and then, so I think, like, you know, if you're watching online, if you're at home, you know, and you're having a stirring in your heart, like, just say a prayer. Just say a prayer. Talk to the woman who invited you. Talk to, you know, someone who told you about Jesus. And then if you invite people, be ready to share your story too, because we are we're called to be priests, we're called to be disciples and share. And there's so much power in what the Holy Spirit can do in our life. So, thank you.
Thank you. I just have to say again, your story is so inspiring to me, and just really, when I started the Anchor, whatever that, 12 years ago, that sums up everything about being there, sharing our stories, and being anchored in faith, hearing about the way. I always think, John 14:6, Jesus is the way, and you heard him saying that to you, I think is so special, and that you had the friendships too. It just sums up what the Anchor is all about.
Yeah.
And I'm just so thankful.
Thank you,
you so much for
everybody.
sharing. Thank you. The way this all came together was pretty divine. How when I first asked Donna if she could speak tonight, she wasn't able to for the date we were originally going to be here. We were going to be here a week ago. And then we got moved to tonight, and then got word she was going to be in town for this other event, and it just was the perfect timing. I couldn't believe it. And that Jen said yes after having a baby 2 months ago was like, I can't believe it. We're all here in this room to celebrate God's goodness and how he ordains and works things in his time. So at this time, I do have the privilege of introducing our speaker for this evening, and her name is Donna Winship, and she's the co-founder for a ministry called Identity Exchange. She and her husband Jamie founded it together, and they meet with leaders all around the world. They train and consult with them about their true identity, and we'll hear more about that. And a really interesting fact about Donna is she and her husband raised their 3 boys over a 25-year span in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. They lived there. And I loved reading about her because she was grounded in her faith in Jesus during that time. So she has a lot of experience. She also is, this is a fun note, a former elementary school teacher and principal. Didn't realize that, our Anchor moment. And she and her husband live in Tennessee. So let's welcome now Donna Winship.
I feel like I can just go home because, Jen, that was amazing. And, it reminds me of the parable of the sower and the seed, because the sower is just throwing the seed, and whoever receives it, receives it. And the sower doesn't worry about who is going to receive it. The sower's job is to throw the seed. And God laid on my heart that message, and I do vividly remember that, and I'm shocked that it was 7 years ago, honestly. I thought it was like 3 years ago. And to just hear your story and know after so many years, I'm really humbled and really honored. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing it with us. So I am thrilled to be here. I'm so honored that you invited me, Katie, and to see all your faces of these dear women is just, I feel like I'm going to cry. It's such a joy. The point of human existence is joyful attachment. And I was thinking about what you were saying about your little one smiles at you, your other one's fussed, but the little one smiles. And it made me think of the Lord and identity. Katie said we've built a whole training company around this concept of your true and unique identity. And one of the metaphors that I love about understanding identity is that when you hold your little newborn, your little 2-month-old, and you're making eye contact with them, everybody has experienced that, right? When they're so little and they're searching your face and you're trying to get them to lock onto your eyes, there's this mystery, almost magical connection that happens. And the baby sees the affection on your face, and it starts to create these neural pathways of security, of value, of worth. And the amazing thing is, the baby has done nothing but cry and poop. And you would give your life for the baby, wouldn't you? You would give your life for the baby. And you're holding that little baby, and none of us do this. None of us look at that little baby. We make eye contact, their little mouth, makes that little circle, and they're locked on your eyes, and none of us would ever say this: I can't wait for you to grow up and be a tool in my hand. I can't wait for you to grow up so you can serve me. I can't wait for you to grow up so you can work for me. Right? Would we ever say that? We just love them to pieces. We don't even know who they are yet. And this is exactly how God feels about you. Except somewhere along the line, as we grow up, we feel like our value only comes from what we do for God or do for other people. And it's one of the biggest deceptions out there that causes us to develop what I would call a false identity. We don't get our identity from what we do, what we have, or what people think of us. And that's what causes those voices in your head that Jen referred to. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You don't fit in. You don't belong. Listen, the good news of the gospel is that God is for you. He's your biggest cheerleader. Jesus is with you. He died on the cross to be with you forever. His Spirit lives in you. Nothing can separate you from the love of God. Let this sink in. I'm telling you, this is good news. Nothing can separate you from the love of God that's in Christ Jesus. You have everything you need for life and godliness. Think about this. Think about your current life circumstances. Nothing can separate you. You have everything you need for life and God. Already within you, you have it. You have every spiritual blessing in the heavenly realms. Why do we walk around downcast? You have every spiritual blessing in the heavenly realms. I have to hold this up so my mouth stays close to the microphone. You have a Father who promises to never leave you or abandon you. Do we really believe that? Like, what is informing your belief system? Are these truths informing it? And what is the key that unlocks this on a daily basis? Because if you're like me, I would say you don't feel this way on a daily basis, right? We all have suffering in our lives. Suffering doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. Suffering is a fact of life, and it's through suffering that we experience intimacy with God. So instead of saying, why is this happening to me? I mean, I have a friend in here that just went through cancer and chemotherapy and the whole thing, and she's sitting here smiling. I don't think she once said, God, why is this happening to me? No, here's the question, the right question. God, what do you want me to know about this? God, what do you want me to know? Why is this happening to me in a difficult circumstances is letting the liar inform your identity. I'm not good enough. God's not with me. False, false, false. You have every spiritual blessing in the heavenly realms. He has made you worthy in your true identity. So the key that unlocks these truths on a daily basis is understanding how to receive. More than identity, how to receive. Your highest level of maturity in your faith is not based on how many Bible verses you know, not based on your awesome theology, not based on your perfect denomination of what church you attend, not based on how little you sin. It's based on how much you're willing to receive from God. How much are you willing to receive from God? I just want to say a word about identity, and then we're going to talk about receiving, because your identity is discovered and received from God and developed in community. Now, I didn't know this for years. I had been a believer. I don't know if this is in the archives, when I spoke here before, if it's on some YouTube video somewhere maybe, but I remember I told a lot about my story of growing up in a very Jewish family. My grandparents all immigrated from what's now Lithuania in the early 1900s to really escape the genocide that was happening. If you've seen Fiddler on the Roof, those pogroms, of course, that's Hollywooded up. It was really hideous how they were just being slaughtered, the Jews. Anyway, my grandparents escaped, immigrated to this country, and it's a big, long, beautiful story that I think I talked about last time. But I came to faith, I grew up very Jewish, came to faith in Jesus when I was about 20 years old, and started growing, started doing all the things, being discipled, and it was life-changing, obviously. But the day my life was transformed beyond recognition was the day I realized that I can hear from God and that He calls me by name. Your identity doesn't come from your job, your role in life, your ethnicity, your religion, your bent towards politics. Your identity is received, discovered and received. I just saw my good friend back there. Your identity is discovered and received and developed in community. It's timeless. It's the essence of who you really are. You won't take this body into eternity, but you will take your identity into eternity. And this is the beautiful time to practice. Because you know what? Your identity is God's gift to you. It's His DNA, it's His image and likeness that you're created in, put into your heart as He gifts it to you and you receive it. That's our main theme for tonight. It overflows out of you and it's your gift to the world. Does that make sense? If you're not receiving it, and you get your identity from what you have, what you do, what people think of you, when somebody thinks badly of you, what happens? We crumble. When we lose our job, we're devastated. And so then, what are you giving away? What's then your gift to other people? Right? You can't give away what you don't have. You're only reflecting what you have received. So what are you receiving? What are you receiving? So your highest level of maturity comes from how willing you are to receive from God. I want to give you a biblical example of this. And to me, the person I'm going to talk about is really the feminine archetype in Scripture. Not just an amazing human being that lived at the time of Christ, but has become the epitome of the true feminine virtue. All of us, like I said before, are created in the likeness and image of God. And God is neither man nor woman, right? He's spirit. Even though we use these terms of endearment like father because we need a symbol, our heart thinks in symbols. And so we need a symbol to represent that idea of someone who loves us unconditionally, who protects us, who provides security for us. This is the image of a perfect father. But we know He's neither male nor female. To show us what He's really like in human beings, He created the masculine virtues and the feminine virtues. And we really see that in Adam and Eve. Okay, you tracking with me? The feminine virtue receives. Don't you love that you are a woman and that you have both, but more strongly you have the feminine virtue? This is why the enemy in Genesis 3 goes after Eve. Because if he can stop her from receiving, think metaphorically now, then she can't just go through that gestation process, that creation process, and she can't give birth to something new. The masculine virtue, is a doer. And that's what we see in Adam. He wants to do. And so when Eve doubts the word of the Lord to her, she's operating out of fear. If God's not going to give it to me, I better get it on my own. That's not true. It's a deception. But then she's creating from her own ideas and not with the Lord. Okay? So all of us, but especially women, have this unique virtue to be able to receive an idea from God, let it be in the oven, right? Let it come into what it's supposed to be, and then we give birth to it. And then in the true masculine, we take that thing, the masculine virtue, and we execute it. We do something with it. We execute the plan. What happens is we come up with the idea on our own and execute a plan, and it fails. And then what do? We do it again. And we do it again. And it becomes compulsive repetition, and it doesn't work. Right? Anybody know what I'm talking about? We keep doing the same thing over and over. Why? Because we're not hearing, receiving from God, and living in the truest sense of who we are, which is our gift to the world. Okay, let's look at Mary Magdalene, is my feminine archetype of receiving. So you guys can go back and read her story. So let me clear up some misconceptions first. A lot of people clump Mary Magdalene in with some prostitutes that Jesus healed. But if you do some research into church history and the earliest writings that were written about the life of Jesus, Mary was from a very wealthy city, Magdala, and there were a group of women that followed Jesus around and financed his life and ministry. So 99.9% certain she wasn't a prostitute. And the first time we see Mary Magdalene is in Luke chapter 8. And in Luke chapter 8, it says that, where's my right paper? In Luke chapter 8, it says that she was tormented by 7 demons, and that she had an encounter, a kairos moment, and he delivered her from those 7 demons. Now that sounds terrifying, right? But remember, in the true feminine virtue, your heart's made to receive. Just like the sower and the seed, he's throwing the seed and it lands where it will. She receives some bad seed, not from the sower. So her heart's open, and even your physical heart, right? You receive on the left side, the blood comes in. She had received, I don't know what, from the world. And it expressed itself, as scripture says, in these tormenting spirits. Anybody ever feel like you're being tormented? Right? Why is this happening to me? Oh, no, that's the wrong question. God, what do you want me to know? But you know what I'm talking about, where you get in these loops and you're just ruminating and wishing things were different. You know, one of my coaches for our company, Identity Exchange, says if ruminating could heal us, we would all be well, right? We get in that spiral of thinking these doomed thoughts. Okay, so Mary, that's her first encounter with Jesus. He heals her. How do you think she feels about Jesus? Oh my gosh, well, she finances his ministry. That's how she feels about him. But he healed her. She had a life-changing experiential encounter that brought her into her true self. Do you know what she's known as in history? The apostle to the apostles. Because she walked with Jesus, and she was known as the closest woman to Jesus. And so when she was released of these tormenting spirits, she was just being filled every day. Remember what I said? Joyful attachment. She got to look in his eyes every day and hear his teaching and receive his love live and in person. Now, on that day, women weren't allowed to be mentored by rabbis, And so, do you see how clever she was? That's part of us women being able to receive and think of ideas and give birth to them. And then in our masculine virtue, which we have both, we're able to do it. She's like, okay, I can't technically sit under his teaching, but I can follow him around and pay for his lunch. And I can follow him around and make sure he stays at a really good inn and has a good bed. And so sneaky how she figured that out. I love that, because we can be really sneaky and clever, can't we? Okay, so fast forward through the life of Jesus. He dies on the cross, right? He dies on the cross. And it says in Scripture that in all 4 Gospels, which is really important, this isn't just in one Gospel, it's in all 4 Gospels, that Mary was with him from the crucifixion, never left his side until the encounter in John chapter 20 at the tomb. Never, that utter devotion. Why? Why did she have it? Because he changed her life. Jen, why do you have it? Because he changed your life. What makes you press in? Nothing changes your life like an experiential encounter. She had heard it in church all her life. Sorry, I keep picking on you, but it's such a great example. She'd heard it in church her whole life. She'd done Bible studies, I'm sure, read scripture passages. It's the encounter that changes us. It's from the encounter that everything else flows. So here she is, John chapter 20. She's at the tomb. And she's weeping. She's weeping because the tomb is empty. And you know, they didn't quite understand everything that Jesus foretold about his death and resurrection, because he talks in symbol and metaphor. And so he's gone. Can you imagine how she must have felt? This man that she was so close in relationship to, that changed her life, that she was with almost every day for 3 years. Can you imagine how abandoned she felt? How alone she felt? And the pain, the grief, the weeping, deep sorrow indicates deeper love. And here comes Peter and John. They run in, they run, they peek in. Why are you crying? The tomb's empty. They peek in and they run away, and God bless them. But do you know what they did when they ran away? It says they went with the other disciples and locked themselves in a room for fear of the Jews. Mary stayed at the tomb, not afraid to face her pain. The 2 men ran from their pain and went back to fear. What casts out fear? Perfect love. We beg God to take away our fear, don't we? I've done it. I still do it sometimes, even though I know this process. God doesn't want to take away your fear. I'm telling you right now, he wants to walk with you through it. Because when he walks with you through it, if you're willing to stay in the pain and say, God, what do you want me to know? You encounter him, and then you're not afraid of that thing anymore, because you know he's with you. This is what Jesus is demonstrating on the cross. He knew God would be with him. And he was. Read Psalm 22. He never left him. And what's on the other side? The resurrection, and death is defeated. Check that one off the list. Not afraid of death anymore. So Mary learned this from being with Jesus, and she wasn't afraid to face her pain. She didn't run and hide away. We hide away in our heart, in our fear, don't we? We have locked rooms that we don't want to open because we're afraid it's too painful. But when Jesus, who suffered the worst pain any of us could ever imagine, walks through it with you, he heals you. He fills that place with love and peace. So there's Mary at the tomb weeping, and she has first an encounter with 2 angels. I wish we had more time. My husband had a big encounter with angels when we lived in Baghdad. We lived in Baghdad during the war, and he had a lot of fear about some things. I'm sure there's a story on YouTube about this. And he asked me to wake up in the middle of the night and walk through the whole house and pray with him, and I did, and I was like, can I go back to bed? Can I go back to bed? And he still felt agitated. And I went back to bed, and he went up on the roof. You know, in the Arab world, the roofs are flat, and they spend a lot of time on the roof because it's so hot. Get out of the house, and in the cool of the evening, up on the roof, and he screamed out to God. This is called confession. And this is, Jen, what you did in the back of the room when you just released it all. Confession is just telling God the truth. We protect ourselves from God. We feel like you can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth. And so we pretend like, God, take away my fear, take away my fear. Okay, I'm going to be okay. And God says, tell me what you're afraid of. Just tell me what you're afraid of. And Jamie stood on the roof and screamed out to the city. He could see the mosques, the stars, and he just said, I'm afraid that you're not with us here. We were worried about our kids at the time and how they had to get to school, and it's in the middle of a war zone. And suddenly he was aware of a presence, and there were 4 angels on the roof. Like, he went up and thanked. I mean, it was so real, he went up and thanked him. Anyway, it's an awesome story. But this is what happens to Mary. They've taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they put him. And she's weeping. She's not afraid to tell the truth. And suddenly she sees the angels. Actually, they ask her the question. And then she hears a voice behind her. Mary. He says her name. She recognizes that name because it's more than a name. It's not just a moniker. It's her identity. A lot of people think he called her Mary Magdalene because Magdalene means light. Mary. And at first she doesn't recognize it, and she thinks it's the gardener. And these are such beautiful metaphors of the first garden. And now this is the recreation story. We're getting a do-over. And she's in another garden. And here's the gardener, and the gardener's with him. And she, soon as he says her name, she recognizes him. And she's Rabbi, Master. She confessed her truth, and God replaced it with his truth, and it changed her life. So what is your truth today? What is your truth today? Are you willing to sit in your pain and tell him the truth and let him replace it with his truth? Do you see the perfect feminine virtue? She's receiving the truth from God. And then in that masculine virtue, what does he tell her? Because she was willing to wait for him, he sends her to go tell the disciples. He sends a woman because he knows that she doesn't just talk the talk. She walked the walk. She did the work of being healed of false beliefs, the tormenting spirits of false beliefs. And she came into the truth of who God is, that he's with me, he's for me, he loves me. Nothing can separate me from his love, not even death. And so she is uniquely qualified in her true identity, in her joyful connection, to go and tell the others. Here's the beautiful thing. The others were afraid and locked in a room and hiding. Here's the hope in that. If you have something you're hiding that's locked away in you, Jesus still comes. He did not show up to the disciples like, well, you guys are afraid, I'm not coming. No, that's like going to a doctor because you have heart pain and the doctor says, well, not treating you, you go get well and then come see me. Right? He's the healer. He's the physician. And he's judging our condition and healing us. So we have Mary acting in the true feminine, and is able to then, in the true masculine, execute. And then we have the disciples locked in their fear, who Jesus breaks through. That's another picture of you, Jen. You were the perfect setup for this talk. He broke through, right? You came. God is madly in love with you. He is never disappointed in you. Nothing you can do can make him not love you. Ask him today, God, who do you say that I am? Now that I know you love me, you're with me, who do you say that I am? And what do you want me to know about the struggle I'm having? What do you want me to know? And receive his word to you, and then that word literally becomes your flesh, right? The word became flesh and dwelt among us. His word to you becomes your flesh, and then that's your gift to the world. You know, we lived in Israel for a while, and there's a motto among the Israelis, kind of hard to believe what's happening today, but we won't get into that. And it's the Hebrew phrase, tikkun olam, and it means repair the world. If we were all obeying God, to obey in Hebrew means to listen and respond. If we were all listening, receiving the idea, receiving the inspiration, receiving our identities, letting it grow, letting it develop, and then giving birth to it, how different our world would be. We'd literally be repairing the world. So I encourage you, open your heart and receive. God, thank you so much for these women that are here tonight. Thank you for everything in them, all the circumstances that came together for them to be present, and those listening online. And I pray, Lord, that we would make it a daily habit to ask this question to you. I say this is the prayer that changed my life. God, what do you want me to know? And how can I live fearlessly in my true identity just today? What do you want me to know? Receive it in the true feminine. And what do you want me to do? And go out in the strength that he's already given you. I bless each one here, God, with joy, that they would know that joyful attachment to you, and that they would be securely rooted and grounded in your love. In Jesus' name, amen.
Wow, that was a very amazing message with so much to take in. I can't believe you actually were sharing about, truly, one of my favorite stories I'm obsessed with lately is the Mary at the tomb. And I love that story and the encounter, and that we are the ones that get to go share the good news. It's God's strategy. He knew that we're good at that encounter, and then we are great at sharing it, our stories, and how the Lord has been real to us. So I just thank you so much on so many levels. That was amazing. At this time, you'll find some discussion questions on the screen. And for those of you online, we hope you can gather in your watch parties or ponder them on your own and go deeper with the message. And those of you here in person, we have the questions on the little papers on the back there. On your seats, there are the questions if you want to circle up here in a minute, and we'll give you some time. So our hope and prayer is that you'd go deeper with the message and that you'd be really encouraged. And now, before we conclude finally for the evening, I've got a couple really fun announcements to share. We want to make sure you all know about our finale, Anchor at Home. Can't believe the season is coming to an end, and our last broadcast will be June 6th, And we have a very special treat. We have an interview, I already did it, with Helen Smallbone. And if you know that name, she's the star role in the recent movie that's out right now called Unsung Hero. She's the mother of Luke and Joel Smallbone, the For King and Country singing group. We've featured them on the Anchor at Home quite often. And she is the mother, and that movie, if you're looking for a good one, it is so inspirational. I mean, I could go see it again. It's so, so good. And so we have our very special interview with her and her daughter, Rebecca St. James, and Luke and Joel all sing a special song for the Anchor. So we have that for June 6th. We hope you can tune in a watch party or on your own, whatever works best. And then the other piece of news I want to share is we want to make sure you mark your calendars for our annual Anchor Day Getaway Retreat. It is going to be August 21st in beautiful Gig Harbor, Washington. And our speaker is going to be Ruth McKinney. And she is the author of Hungry for Home, a wonderful, beautiful book. And she's from Philadelphia. And we have more details coming, but I wanted to make sure you get the date, August 21st. And our registration opens June 1st. So be on the lookout for more details. And with that, we now come to the end. And I just want to say thank you again for being here in person, and for all of you out there that are tuning in online or on your own. We're so thankful you've been with us tonight. And we wish you a wonderful month filled with the joy and strength that Jesus brings. And until next time, like I always like to say, stay anchored, and we will see you soon.